really like to take some contributions from the floor. There are a couple of questions that I think I'm going to concentrate on two of them. And I guess the ones I want to concentrate on will be the first one. So we all agreed that we're in very different times. We all agreed that we've got to deliver, can't do more for less anymore. We've got to deliver good enough for less. So that question around how do we know what's going to be good enough, and I think Leslie's given us some great thinking on that in terms of looking at sort of much better communication with our customers in terms of understanding what's good enough for them. The second question that I'd like to focus on is actually, you know, we're all at different stages in this development in terms of better use of data, better use of intelligence in terms of managing our... There's millions of systems and solutions that are out there, we know that, this kind of technology that could be coming out of our ears. But what's actually stopping us? I mean, for us as a provider of solutions, it's interesting because when we get, you know, a tender through from organisations like yourselves, take the management, the tender will very often be something that has to be submitted at about 300 pages. I'm sure lots of you in here, you're all laughing, you probably made us write those. Normally over Christmas. We'll send it to us sort of just before Christmas, got to be back in by January, but that's... Now, what's interesting is that within that 300 pages, when you look at how much of it focuses around performance management and reporting, I actually lifted one out as an example. About 10, 20 pages. So there's a real change that we need to come to in terms of the cultural changes we've spoken about, recognition that we need to be doing things differently, and what's stopping us from doing that right now. So, I'm going to go for that very first question in terms of, you know, the outcomes and how we know what's good enough, alongside the better interaction with the customers. What else could we be doing?
Can I ask a question on that thing? Because I thought it was interesting that Richard and Leslie both talked about the role of scrutiny or tenant groups and so on, and clearly that's important. But I wonder how we're going to avoid this, a repeat really, the silo mentality with the demise of the Audit Commission, and for whatever ills it had, it did force some level of benchmarking, it did force some level of learning from other organisations, comparative not only on performance satisfaction but also cost of value for money. How in the new world and with these new forums you've got, are you going to overcome just compare, you know, you've got customer satisfaction with yourselves, but how are they going to know that actually you're any good compared with the landlord up the road and everything else? What are you going to do to actually, and you're all working with lots of partners and lots of local authorities, so how are you actually going to overcome?
In terms of our scrutiny council have just done a piece of work around repairs. We had some real issues around timeliness of repairs. We had lots of really good feedback about the quality, quite a lot of dodgy feedback about timeliness. And we wanted to try and get underneath this, and we've got a centralised customer service centre, we've got local neighbourhood teams. We were quite aware that the communication between those teams was not as good as it could have been. That was a point of service failure for our customers. So one of the things they did as part of that scrutiny exercise was they collected and we collected on their behalf lots and lots of benchmarking information. Now I've got quite a lot of reservations around benchmarking. You know, you add it up several times, you divide by 20 and you get a figure that you might compare with somebody else, but then again you might not. It's relative. But within the constraints of benchmarking, you do have to provide your customers with that external perspective, because when they buy any other service, they go on Kelcom and do a price comparison, and you know, you do have to provide them. Scrutiny isn't just about an internal assessment, it is about taking soundings from the rest of the sector and the rest of the business to be able to provide people that comparison.
It's a good question, because at the face value you would expect over the next few years for benchmarking to kind of dissipate. Actually, I think there will be a change. I think benchmarking will still be there. I don't know if Leslie around that, but there will be a change in the type of benchmarking which is, and that's the point I was making before about customer profiling. Because the key to benchmarking is understanding the constituent groups and the constituent geography that we're talking about. And if benchmarking can get more sophisticated around customer profiling, then we're in a far better world. We're all collectively in a far better world. And I think it goes back to the point that you're making there, Sir, about good enough for less. We're on a journey here. And actually, we're right at the beginning of the journey where, quite rightly, we're talking to our customers and we're working out what our priorities are, what their priorities are, and how the two can come together, and how then you measure them. We have a similar example around repairs where we put in place right first fix. And there's a process measure and there's a satisfaction measure around that. So if we think the process measure might be succeeding, we need to check that the satisfaction measure is also succeeding. There's a perception as well as reality. And so there's several different measures that will come up, but the key to it, I think, as we go through the next few years, in terms of getting good enough for less, will be the sophistication that we put in place around benchmarking, and the understanding of our customers is absolutely the bottom line there.
I think that's a great point. I'm really glad you raised it, because I think that whole kind of customer insight and understanding is going to become core and fundamental to what we do. Has anybody kind of started down that in terms of the organisation they're in, and feel that they've started strides in terms of, you know, improving the way they profile, the way how they understand their clients? Nobody?
Yeah, I think well, the way I would put it, we do several different things here. We've gone beyond the diversity trend here. So we don't just analyse satisfaction from diversity, we also start to look at the geography and the type of customer we're talking about here. The next stage for me, and I don't know whether anyone else in this room would share this, is you probably are aware of the differentiation of branding, consumer branding products put on customers. They go out and they segment customers.
Yeah.
And you put into, it's beyond the ABC category, it's more sophisticated than that.
But it's supplied by companies like Experian, people
That's
like
right,
that.
yeah. They're called geodemographics. And essentially we're starting to use that information and compare it to our own internal database to get that kind of sophisticated breakdown of segments of our customers through GIS systems and other systems that we have. And that for me is the beginnings of, it's only the beginnings of a better understanding of the customer, because there's other elements to that. And what you get when you talk to them, and what you do there, Leslie, is very much around focus group work, and that's exactly what we would want to do and continue to do around that. And it's a combination of all these different pieces of information that you can then use as a reference to analyse your performance and get better sophisticated benchmarking.
I think it's just that move away from the regulatory framework led you very much to measure your processes. How fast is the not how quick, not how good. And the move is more that regulation's going now, isn't it? In terms of it matter. It still does matter how fast, but matters quite a bit more how good.
Oh, well, absolutely.
I think you were talking about corporate strategy and having lots of complicated strategies, and I think it's still about prioritisation. I think sophistication is in prioritisation. So you're talking about benchmarking for groups, but actually the answer to that question is it could be both of those first things, because there are some. It's a bit like the nation at the moment. Everybody knows the costs need to be cut, don't they? Yeah. But there are places where people will accept those cuts, and there are places where they won't accept those cuts. So I think the answer to the first question is in part prioritising around what are the things that will make the most difference or the least difference. So is it about you coming out to fix something really quickly, or is it about whether it's a complete refit?
Yeah, and we got to that from doing some focus group work during the summer.
Yeah.
And basically what we did in one of the focus groups work is kind of stated preference technique.
Yeah.
And we basically said, there's a pound, you tell us how you're going to divide that pound up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would
It's
say
a stated
that
preference technique that gets you the priorities. And that's how we got to right first fix as being kind of the top of the tree.
I mean, in a sense, you've got to avoid putting your problem as a deliverer of whatever in their court by saying, we've got no money, so what should we do about it? But putting that in a positive way that says, we can do this or this, and we can do a bit of that and lots of that, or lots of that and a bit of that. And actually, focus groups is one way, in communities or whatever, and giving a bit of options, because people, I think, are more grown up than we give them credit for in understanding the world. But what you probably don't know is exactly which are the sensitive bits. It's like mobile technology. Everybody is going with mobile technology. The world isn't going to stop you know, if we said, well, you can't do mobile technology, strangely, I think the world would resist that. Whereas there are some things where they're compromised, and I think it's understanding that balance. And I think that's really difficult.
I'm speaking as yesterday's man here from the Audit Commission.
Oh, 1, 2, 3.
Tomorrow's
Oh.
No, well, when I can, but I've seen how a lot of organisations do it and do it well. So I thought I'd share that, because I think the point about segmenting is very important. But I think it's actually more useful for solutions than for benchmarking. So rather than saying, you know, I can compare performance at this level, and also you can't do it at all. I mean, if you're working in London, you'll know that satisfaction levels are lower, and you have to know those things to do the measures. But the really good use of it, I think, is saying, okay, yes, we've noticed that the Somali community have a high level of arrears. Let's go in there and see what it is and find out what problems this community is facing. Rather, so it's the comparison, but not to see how well you're doing, but to see how to
I think it's both. I mean,
resolve the problem.
We use it for both.
Because the difficulty, and this you do come across this, if you get too clever with your comparisons, is it's always used as an excuse when you're not doing well. You just say, oh, we've got a different segmentation. Now, you hear it so many times from managers when they'll say, whenever the performance isn't good, they will give which sometimes has just some justification, sometimes doesn't, but it just takes away from any
If you're not doing
comparison
anything around that segmentation, I agree.
Yeah.
But if you're doing something around that segmentation the way you describe,
Yes.
then I think it's fair to draw that distinction both in segmentation, performance and the benchmarking.
Yeah,
provided you're doing something.
It's doing something about it that matters most, I think, rather than the few. Doesn't matter with bottom quartile
It's not an
because
excuse, yeah.
you know, which is where it can go. But also the comment you made, which I think is also key to it, was if you measure how fast, and I certainly agree with you on every inspection I've been on, trying to say that, you know, right first time is more important because it's what people count. But if the attitude of the staff is, how can we fiddle the figures to make us look better, the whole of this thing that you're trying to build here collapses.
Yes.
Because the whole of business intelligence performance, if the attitude is how can I persuade my manager or some external regulator or anybody else that we're better than we really are, you're never going to improve performance. And that it doesn't matter whether it's fast or fixed first time or satisfaction or whatever the measure is, if the culture is how can we make the performance figures look better.
That's what I was trying to say really in terms of cultural change around reporting and performance. It's not about let's look back and see where it failed, oh my god it's all going wrong, let's have a project to put it right, all that kind of knee-jerk cycle that you get into when you look retrospectively at performance. It's about identifying, you know, business intelligence is about, to me, it's about identifying where are your service improvements, where are you going to make improvements to performance, and you know that's why it's really my remit at GNC is management information, service improvement, customer engagement, and data quality. To me, those four things are intrinsically linked together.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm really sorry, but I've got people looking through the window, which I think means I need to finish and summarize. I want to do a very, very quick summary. First of all, thank you for your contribution, thank you for taking part. I said at the beginning I wanted to walk out with a better understanding, and just to make sure I'm clarifying that, what I'm taking away is three things. I've heard very clearly about this desire to work towards outcome-based, so the ability to work towards outcome-based services and solutions. And within that, having the ability to know and understand our clients better, being absolutely crucial. So for us as a partner, looking at the ways in which we can help you with that segmentation, help you with your insight, and certainly help you in terms of knowing that you are achieving those outcomes and delivering what you want to deliver. Does that make sense to everybody? Thank you very much for your attendance today, appreciate it. And join me in thanking Gordon Leslie.